So over the next few days, as promised, I'm going to try and get through some scouting reports from the 2019 NFL Draft. Forgive me, but I'm trying to play catch up. And ultimately, I watched a lot of these prospects, put together scouting reports. I might as well upload some of them. That's been the intention all along. It's my intention, and that's what I'm going to try and do. So as always, I'm going to start off with the quarterbacks, and I will start off with Kyler Murray, the Heisman Trophy winner from Oklahoma, who ultimately went #1 overall to the Arizona Cardinals. So clearly, 1 year after trading up from 15 to 10 to get Josh Rosen, the Cardinals saw something they really valued and wanted out of Kyler Murray. And was that head coach Cliff Kingsbury saying this is the perfect guy for my system? That surely had to play a part in the decision. But ultimately, a year after taking 6-foot tall Baker Mayfield #1 overall for the Cleveland Browns and thinking that's gutsy, what the hell do you call taking a 5'10" quarterback who might still have some lingering desire to play baseball if football doesn't initially go well for him? That takes brass ones. Or an idiot like Steve Keim. Who knows? And ultimately, only time will tell. Now, when I look at Kyler Murray, this is an example to me of it can be really hard to formulate an opinion on a guy when you primarily have only seen him for one season. While you saw plenty of good in that one season, the fact is the sample size is still relatively small. So there is the potential for a ton of upside, and there is a lot of risk associated with this pick, especially for a guy that's like 5'10". And while you will hear the comparisons to a Russell Wilson ad nauseum when it comes to Kyler Murray in some ways, they are different players to a degree. They certainly are different players. And just because they both are the same height doesn't automatically mean that that's a great comparison. But here's what I liked about Kyler Murray's game on film. He had enough arm to make all the required NFL throws. While certainly he didn't have the arm strength of Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, he has enough hose to be able to get the ball wherever he needs to, including the 20-yard deep out. He can stretch the field vertically, but he's not going to throw it with a frickin' laser, but enough. Like, you can't play in too close on him because he can beat you over the top. His accuracy is solid, especially for a guy that didn't start a ton in college. Like, his accuracy was pretty good to me, and that is something that, as time goes along, in some ways, with some guys I will value more than others. It just depends. Like last year, Josh Allen, I was big on him, but accuracy most certainly was not the name to his game. But there were enough other things I'm like, oh my goodness. With Kyler Murray, though, he's got plenty of functional arm strength. He's got plenty of functional accuracy. He generally has pretty solid ball placement on short and intermediate throws. Now, some of that could be helped out by the system that he played at in Oklahoma, but nonetheless, you can have a high completion percentage, but your ball placement be scattered and all over the place, and either A, you're just benefiting from your guys always being open, or B, your guys are making all types of great plays on the ball. Kyler Murray can generally get the ball where he needs to. The one thing that lags a little bit with his accuracy is down the field. It can be kind of hit or miss, especially when he's trying to rush his throws. He can get a little high and underthrown, and that can potentially be a recipe for disaster at the NFL level. When you're trying to throw over the top on zone coverage, especially with the deep safety, you hang that ball too much, that thing is going to get picked off 6 ways from Saturday. Beyond question. I mean, obviously, when you watch Kyler Murray, you see the mobility, you see the natural athleticism, you see those God-given talents, those inherited talents from his family. Comes from a lineage in his family of good to great athletes, and he most certainly is that. He's a natural athlete, great movement skills, great agility, great flexibility. He's got good speed. I mean, he doesn't have great size, obviously, so how many tackles is he going to really run through? But there can be an advantage to being so small when you're running in the open field because you can be really shifty and quick and elusive and have a low center of gravity. It'd be really hard to wrap up on. But he's a guy, absolutely, when you throw him into an NFL offense from day one, he'll be able to make some plays with his legs. That translates. He will be able to extend plays. He will be able to gain first downs, which sometimes to me helps a guy relax, knowing that it's not always just about his arm, especially early on in their careers. Now, eventually you want these guys to transition and become more of a running threat when they want to as opposed to being a running threat because they have to. I look at him and I say, outside of that, his decision making is pretty solid. Seems to show some understanding and feel for when to throw the ball away. Knows when to run and doesn't take off too early. But the good thing is that what I saw a lot when he did decide, and a lot of times, granted, it was coming off of his initial read, but once he did make that decision, he made that decision and he ran with it and he took off with it. There wasn't a lot of hesitation to him. He's willing to take down the check down. And I think that's actually a good trait for a young quarterback to have. You don't always have to make the big play. Just don't make a bunch of really, really bad plays. So I thought his decision making was pretty good. Some of his other traits are okay, like his mechanics. You could see the baseball throwing motion at times. I wish he would utilize his lower body better in that throwing motion, but it's not as huge of a deal for me. Field vision, he shows some ability to go through his progressions, but there's a lot of typical Oklahoma quarterback where he locks onto that primary option, that primary read. And some of that is a product of the fact you play in the Big 12 where the defenses by and large suck. So how much did you have to really go through your progressions? But looking at him, you'd like to be able to see him do that. I did notice sometimes on film and some of the interceptions he threw in 2018 came because he just did not see the deep safety at all. In part, that can be, again, because he gets laser focused on locks down on his primary option and doesn't move off of it at all. That's something he's going to have to get better at. In terms of the things that concern you, I mean, the size is going to be a thing. There just isn't a long pedigree in the modern NFL of 5'10" quarterbacks making it. You got Russell Wilson, Doug Flutie, not a whole lot else. I mean, so that's obviously going to be a concern. And when you talk about taking a 5'10" quarterback, number one overall, who only had 1 year as a full-time starter at Oklahoma, you wonder if he will be able to consistently hold up at the NFL level. He is going to need to add some weight to his frame. If you're not going to be tall, at least be thick, and he needs to get a little bit thicker. Another thing that concerns me when I watch him on film is his pocket presence at times. He can get a little kind of scatterbrained, in particular when he starts rolling out and he starts scrambling. There's this bad habit I've seen at times of him to once he starts taking off as a runner, he drops his eye level. He does not keep looking down the field. There's just kind of like a herky-jerkiness to him. I don't know how else to really describe it other than the fact of at times he looks frantic, frenetic, and that's not always something you want to see. Like when I see Russell Wilson scramble, even when he's scrambling around kind of like a Fran Tarkenton or a Roger Staubach or somebody like that, I always get the sense, if you know what I mean, that Russell Wilson's in control of his faculties, in control of what he's doing. And when I watch Kyler Murray at times, it's kind of like he's just flowing around, not really in control of what's going on. And that concerns me. Outside of that, there's just something about him that, like if you compare to Baker Mayfield, like Baker can have the ability to rub you the wrong way, but you could also see where that could go on the flip side, and he has a tremendous amount of confidence in himself, the type of swagger that other grown men want to gravitate to and they will get behind. Kyler Murray, the way you see him interact in some of his interviews during the draft process and even in the preseason, you're kind of like, ugh. Like, I look at him and I'm like, there's just something that's not 100% there with him. He just doesn't hit me with that true ultimate dude factor. He just doesn't. And then that is a concern. And then thinking about it, if football doesn't go well for him initially, are you talking about a guy that maybe has a desire to go back and try and play baseball? I think now at this point at the quarterback position, you're into it and you got to be committed to it totally. But is he going to be committed to it totally? I don't really know. I look at him, though, and when you're talking about taking a quarterback number one overall, like even sometimes the way I grade, I tend to grade the quarterbacks kind of harshly. I really do. And even if I'm really high on a quarterback, they tend to get a low first-round grade. It's something I've got to work through in future years in terms of my draft grading. It's something I continue to look at and try to continue to evolve. But when talking about Kyler, here's my thing, is you say, even if he's got this flaw, or even if he's got that flaw, or even if he's got a couple of flaws, does he have special traits and characteristics that you could gamble on to say, hey, this guy is still worth an incredibly high first-round pick. A couple of years ago, certainly Patrick Mahomes was my number one graded quarterback in the draft, but based off of my grading scale, I had him as a second rounder. That said, was a quarterback worth taking in the first round because of his arm talent and not just the arm strength. Some of the throws I saw him be able to make were just truly special level stuff. And that is the type of stuff that you can gamble on. That is the type of stuff that you can draft a guy much higher than where his actual ranking or grading potentially lays out. And for Kyler Murray, I don't know outside of the mobility what that true special quality is. Like, what is that truly, truly special quality that he has? Like I said, his arm is above average, but it's not special. His accuracy is above average for a kid coming out of college, especially a guy with one primary year as a starter. But it's not special. His mechanics are okay, but they need work. His field vision can be good, but sometimes he can be a little slow to process what he sees, and he has a tendency to laser focus onto his primary read, struggles to see this deep safety some. You know, he can at times hang tough in the pocket, but other times he can bail out really quickly. You know, I just look at him, and for a number one overall pick, he's got a lot of what I would call maybe fleas in terms of as a prospect. Like, he's got a lot of flaws to him. A lot of things, though, that if he just gets a little bit better at them, you're talking about a really good, probably top 10 to 15 quarterback in the National Football League. And that may very well end up being where he is. But in terms of my grading, I ended up putting a second-round grade on Kyler Murray. Was not the number one quarterback in this draft class for me. And as far as taking him in round one, I would have felt much more comfortable about if I was taking him pick 16 or later. Picks 1 through 15 felt like a bit of a reach to me, if I'm being honest.